Donna Schwartz here from the Everything Saxophone podcast. We're at the NAMM Show 2022. We're live. We're at the Legere booth, and I'm happy we're at the Legere booth because Legere is sponsoring the podcast here at the NAMM Show. Thank you, Chris from Legere. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the show.
Well, thanks for doing everything that you're doing. It's great to be sponsoring, and yeah, we're happy to be here and showing off everything that we've got today.
Awesome, and I picked this spot, folks, because behind us, look at all the reeds. That's really impressive, I've got to say. I mean, it's like a whole wall full of reeds. Love the design.
Yeah, I mean, this year for the dealers, we're happy to show off our new Legere racks. So we're giving these away to dealers for free. Just something a little bit extra we can do to help dealers promote our products and help their stores, look a certain way. And hopefully the dealers appreciate it. So far, the reception has been very good.
Awesome. Now, for Legere reeds, just if people don't know this already, I say this all the time, but I've been using Legere reeds for a really long time. I know it was sometime in the early 2000s, I know that, and I used to use the studio cuts at that point. I still have a studio cut reed, actually, from I think from the year like 2010. Actually, I know, it's bizarre. It still plays. I wouldn't do it on a gig, but it still plays, which is cool. But I've been using Legere reeds for a really, really long time. Can you let people know which instruments can use Legere reeds? Can you just tell us about the cuts that you have available? And then we're going to focus on one particular cut, the newest cut.
Sure. I mean, well, we've been making reeds now for over 20 years. At the time, what we were selling was the Legere reed, which has now become the classic reed. It's great for large ensembles. It's extremely durable. It's a little thicker than our other cuts. And we really recommend that reed for beginner players, but also players that are looking for a particularly dark tone. Next, for both saxophone and clarinet, we've got the Signature. This was the reed that we released right around 2010. It's kind of the reed that made us a little bit better known than we were before. And then since then, we released the European cut for clarinet in 2016 and the American cut for saxophone just in the past couple of years. So it's the American cut really that has people talking today, and I'm sure it's the reed that you'd like to talk about. Yeah, because it is our newest sax reed and our fastest growing reed. We've never really seen growth quite like this in a single reed. So just in the past 6 months, we've released the American cut for soprano and baritone, and the reception has been fantastic. So, yeah, it's a great cut for jazz players, people that are looking for a little bit of extra edge in their tone, and particularly those that really demand that faster response.
Yeah, and I will say this too for myself. I use a combination. I use the Signatures. I also use the American cut. When I want more presence, if I'm playing with a band where I'm fighting to be heard sometimes, and we all know that happens, I put my American cut on, and it really helps. It really helps me to cut, no pun intended, cut through, but it also gives me the presence that I need for sure. Now, there's not only the reed, but there's also this awesome case. This is something new that Legere's done as well.
Yeah, so this case, we redesigned our packaging 2 years ago. Basically, the old packaging was all cardboard, non-recyclable, because it was foil stamped. So we wanted to make the whole thing recyclable, but we also wanted to provide some rigidity in the box just to make sure that it gets to the customer in the same way that it left the factory. But on top of that, it doubles into a case that is very easy to use and safely stores the reed. It might be hard for your audience to see here, but there's a floating tip design just to make sure that the reed is not pushed up against any surface that might warp or deform the reed over time when it's sitting in an Amazon warehouse or wherever it might be. So we've got this floating tip design, and it's basically guaranteed to keep your reed perfectly flat from the moment that it leaves our plant to the moment that it arrives on your mouthpiece. Yeah, please do. Lots of players will end up using their own reed case as opposed to the case that we've got included. But for students, a student that might use this reed for 4, 8 months, 2 semesters, or even a full year, this reed case is going to do the job for them, and give them a way to protect their investment, because this reed, we understand, is not cheap, and we need to provide players with a way to keep it safe over years. You said you had been playing a studio cut for over 10 years.
I've had the reed for a long time.
That's amazing. And if it doesn't crack, it will stay playable forever. It will get dull and muddier over time, and the strength will drop. But as long as it doesn't crack, you'll always have a backup reed that you can use for whatever. If a student's interested in seeing what a synthetic reed's all about, it will be available as long as there are no cracks in it.
Yeah, and also, and speaking about the case too, from what I also know about this as well, the case is recyclable too. So if you're done with the reed, if you don't feel like keeping the case, you can recycle it. That's cool also.
100%. So the reed is recyclable. The case is also, the whole thing is recyclable, including the package. So we tried our best to consider the environment when we were making this. People don't like plastic in general. We do feel like this is a good way to use a little bit of plastic, just so that students in particular can protect their investment for years or however long they've got the reed. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but we are happy with the design, and most players have nothing but positive things to say about the new case.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for reminding me that the reed is recyclable too. I forgot about that. And so many people are used to just chucking their reeds in the garbage. Now you can recycle it. Now you can recycle it, which is really, really cool. Now, also with the American cut, you get the presence. You also get, and you mentioned this too, thanks for the reminder, you get a little bit of a quicker response because the way it's cut, the tip is a little bit thinner, right, than the signature, so the response is a little quicker.
Absolutely. So what we did, we took material from the outside of the reed and basically moved it to the center. That allows us to keep the strength consistent, but it allows the edges to vibrate in a freer sort of way. And that's where the overtones in a saxophone or a clarinet come from, is that edge vibration. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, we did make the tip thinner, and that is what's responsible for the quick, snappy response and instant projection that you get.
Awesome. Now, in terms of, I guess, the sizes of the reed, can we talk about that? And can you talk about that in relation to, so that you've got the signature, you got the American cut. Are the sizes comparable? Are the sizes of the reed comparable? And let's say we take like a Van Doren blue box or something, what would be the comparison?
Yeah, so all of our premium reeds are marked in quarter strengths. And if you're transitioning from cane, we recommend going a quarter strength down. So if you play a 3.5, we'd probably recommend starting with a 3.25. It's personal preference. They are very comparable. People report that the American cut plays just a little bit softer. So if you play a 3.5 signature, you probably want to start with a 3.5 American, or you could go up to a 3.75 if you feel that the signature is kind of on the edge of being too soft for you.
Got it. And this goes up. What does it go from, 1.5 or 1.5 to 4?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing now, this is a jazz reed, and the trend right now that we're seeing is jazz players using these wide open mouthpieces. It feels like it's a new trend over the past 5 to 10 years, and what they require is these very soft strengths. So the signatures go down to 2.0, and the American cuts go down to 1.5. And it's interesting to see the way that the sales come in, because we sell a large number of those very soft strengths in a way that we kind of didn't expect. So it's nice to know that the strength scale is working as intended, and that players are using these reeds the way that we thought they might.
Yeah, and actually, just as an aside too, Gerald Albright, Derek Brown, these are people that have used your reeds for a long time. Gerald Albright, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't he use a 1 3/4?
He has changed over the years. I think he's settled on. He had been playing the 1 3/4 for a very long time. I think he might be up to a 2 right now. On the signatures, he was playing a 2, our lightest strength, and so on the American cut, I believe he's playing also a 2. So, yeah.
So when I refer to that, I'll have to remember that that he changed that up. Now, speaking about, how people approach, playing this, taking care of it and stuff like that, any recommendations from Legere in terms of should you play the reed until you kill it or should you rotate the reeds?
Rotating is a good way to extend the life of your product, but it's also a way to make sure that when you buy a new reed, you kind of know what you're getting. So if you play this reed for the next 6 months, what's going to happen is it will get softer over time, but it will get softer so gradually that you don't necessarily notice. Then you go and you buy the same strength in the future and you say, what has Legere done? They made all these reeds harder, but really what's happened is your reed has dropped in strength in a way that you probably didn't notice because it happens so gradually. So keeping a new one in the box, rotating is a good way to remind yourself what a 2.5 actually feels like. But of course, rotating your reeds is something that we recommend. If you're playing for a long period of time, rotating after an hour is a good way to just extend the life of the reed.
That's actually really great advice. And in terms of caring for them, I mean, the good thing about synthetic reeds is that you can actually wash them.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays with COVID and stuff like that. So any other tips with regard to that? I mean, some people, the temperature of the water and stuff. I always recommend not very hot water, like lukewarm or even cold water to wash the reeds. And I think you should be maybe washing them. I think maybe once a week or something.
Sure. Yeah. Cold water is definitely the right way to go. Because our polymer here is oriented, that means that we line up all the molecules in a row. Heat actually can deorient the molecules. So that's why you might see online, if you have a reed that's just a little bit too too strong, you can dip it in boiling water for less than 5 seconds, like 2 or 3 seconds. And what that will do is deorient the polymer just a little bit, and it will drop the strength. You can go overboard very quickly, but it is a good way to soften up a reed that is just a bit too hard. Unfortunately, there's no way to go in the other direction to harden a reed up, but you can deorient it a little bit to soften it. So yes, we recommend sort of neutral temperature water, or cold water is fine, and just regular old dish detergent is not going to hurt this reed at all. So yeah, once a week is fine, or however often you're comfortable with. Of course, there's no risk of it going moldy, So, but keeping good reed hygiene is important.
Especially now too. But you know what? I didn't know about that boiling trick or that boiling tip. So you would immerse the entire reed, you're saying, for like less than 5 seconds. Less
than 5 seconds. Really, the most important part is the vamp and tip area, but just dipping it in and taking it out. So and then you test a lot and find out if that did anything. And if it feels like it's good, leave it. And if it feels like it's still a bit too hard, you can go a little bit longer. And yeah, really what you're doing is you're taking that chain of molecules and you're kind of mixing it up a little bit. So it loses a little bit of its stiffness. It's that chain of molecules that gives our material its stiffness. So what you're doing is you're altering the structure on a molecular level.
All right, now I have a question, and I just was thinking about this now that you mentioned that. A lot of our listeners and even people that listen to, that are on my website, donnaschwartzmusic.com, they live in all over the world, right? So I have people that live in Costa Rica, very humid, like ridiculously humid. I've got people that live in Colorado, very dry. I live out here in California, very dry, very hot. The great thing is that these don't mold, right? We talked about that, which is fantastic. That's fantastic. I tend to play gigs. Sometimes it can get up to 109 degrees here. And there's people that are in like Palm Springs where it can get to 120 degrees. Do we have to worry about, like, if we're outside playing an outdoor gig, which I know is nuts, I understand, but sometimes you get these private parties. Do we have to worry about the reeds, anything happening with the reeds if we're in that kind of heat for a few hours?
No. It takes much more heat than that to change the structure. So any climate will be fine for our reeds. from a structural standpoint. You, depending on altitude, you do need to change the strength. Our artists report there is some science behind that too, but really weather does not affect our reeds, but altitude will affect sound and pressure of any wind instrument, any instrument.
All right. So wait, this is something that I'm not aware of. So the people that report to you with regard to altitude, are they going half strength stronger or less, or a quarter strength stronger or less?
I believe they're going less as they get lower in temperature lower in altitude, and as the pressure builds. As the pressure increases as you go up in altitude, you require a harder reed. I hope I've got that right, but I think so.
Okay, no, that's really good to know. I'll have to make a mental note to definitely check that for sure. Any other things that are going to be coming up for Legere this year?
Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to come up with new ideas. Right now, we are working on getting our double reed program going again. COVID has kind of put the double reed development on a bit of a back seat, but because we actually redeveloped the way that we code the software for our reeds, so we've got that project done. It means that we're able to make tweaks to read profiles very easily in a way that we were not able to do before. And because double reeds are so complicated to program and machine, we have a much better ability now to make fine-tuned tweaks to particularly the American scrape oboe, which we had good reeds in the past, but we couldn't make them consistently. So lots of oboe players routinely ask for this reed, and getting those reeds out and that project revitalized is the priority for the next 6 months. In terms of saxophone, right now we had just launched the soprano and Barry American cuts 6 months ago. Things are going well, so we're going to just stay the course at the moment and make sure that as many players as possible know about those reeds. But there will be news in the next year or so about new products that we've got coming out.
Awesome. And you do have oboe and bassoon reeds.
We do, and they sell well. The players that like them really like them. It's a more polarized group of players. So either you absolutely love the reeds or you don't love the reeds so much. And what we're trying to do is create reeds that more players love. So nothing's going to happen to the current oboe and bassoon reed, but newer and better cuts, and for different instruments: English horn, contrabassoon, American scrape oboe. These are all reeds that we know that there's a strong market for, and we want to make sure that we're providing reeds for those players as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, Chris, thank you so much for your time. It's been already busy for him here at NAMM, so I appreciate you taking the time for this interview for the podcast.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping by.